Okay, today we're going to do notes for section 2.3, and the title of this is going to be polynomial, and I'm just going to put poly, that just is a little bit easier, okay, and I don't have to take up maybe so much space, and synthetic division. Okay, polynomial division is just going to be regular long division like you did back in 5th grade or something. But synthetic division is going to be kind of a not real division. You can use it sometimes and sometimes you can't, just like when you think about a synthetic fabric. It's kind of the same way. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the long division. And you'll use some of the same concepts that you did when you were learning to divide a long time ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the polynomial 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4, and we're going to divide that by x minus 2. Okay? Now what you want to do is you want to be sure that you make your long division bar like you did way back when, and you put the 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4 underneath the bar, and whatever you're dividing by goes on the outside. Okay? Now what you're going to do is you're going to completely just cover up that minus 2. Just pretend like that minus 2 is not even there. And you're going to take x, and there's a coefficient of 1 understood to be there, and you're going to say, how many times is 1 going to 6? Well, that's 6. And then you ask yourself, how many times does x go into x cubed? And that's x squared. Okay, so again, you worry only about the first linear term. You don't worry about anything after that. And then you just distribute 6x squared times x, which is going to give you 6x cubed, and then 6x times negative 2, which is going to give you negative 12x squared. Then you draw your line, and what I like to do is change the signs, okay? It's just a lot different. It's different in different ways as far as how you look at it. You can just say subtract like you've always done, but I like to change the sign. So at this point, I change my sign, and then I combine my terms. Okay, the 6x cubes are going to cancel out, and I'm going to be left with negative 7x squared plus 16x minus 4. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing all over again. I'm going to start with my x that's in my divisor. Consider the 1. How many times does 1 go into negative 7? Well, it goes in there negative 7 times. Okay, how many times does x go into x squared? X times. Again, you're disregarding that 2, that subtract 2, you're disregarding that into the divisor until you get ready to distribute. Now take your negative 7 and distribute it to each of your terms in your divisor. So negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. And then negative 7x times negative 2 is positive 14x. Draw your line, and now you go back and you change your signs. So this becomes positive, this becomes negative, and then you combine your terms. Your x squareds cancel out, and you're left with 2x minus 4. All right, now then, you start all over. You do the same thing again. Take just the first term of your divisor. How many times does 1x go into 2x? Well, that's positive 2 times. And then you're going to distribute. Now, this is where you use both terms. You're going to say 2 times x, which is 2x. And then you're going to say 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. Draw your line, change your signs, combine, and you have no divisor. So that's your answer. Your answer is 6x squared minus 7x plus 2. So x minus 2 goes into that long polynomial 6x squared minus 7x plus 2 times. And that's all there is to it. Okay, let's try another one. Right, this time we're going to have x minus 1 on the outside. That's going to be our divisor. Okay, and then on the inside, we're going to have x cubed minus 1. Okay, So I'm going to write that down here. This is what's going on the inside, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to write it on the inside. You want to be sure that you descend with your powers. You don't want to skip one. That's like place value when you're doing division. So you want to be sure. We went from x cubed to 1, so we're going to go ahead and say no x squareds. There are no x's, okay? But then you can go ahead and put -1. You definitely want to put the 0x squared and the 0x in there because they're placeholders. It may not make difference on this one, but it will on some of them. So you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. All right, how many times does 1x go into x cubed? And that's going to be 1x squared times. Now you distribute. X squared times x is x cubed. And x squared times -1 is negative x squared. Now, if you had not put that filler in there of the 0x squared, so you would be off on your place value. So you want to put those fillers in. That's the reason. Draw your line, go back and change your signs, and then combine. The x cubes cancel out, and you are left with x squared. Go ahead now then and bring your 0x minus 1 down. And then divide. X goes into x squared, x times. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting that to show up good on this. There we go. All right, now we're going to distribute. X times x is x squared, and x times 1 is negative x. Again, you see the reason why we had to put the fillers in there. If you don't, it's going to mess your place value. Now, go back and change the signs. The x squareds cancel out, and you get x minus 1. Almost done. Start over again. How many times does x go into x? Well, that's positive 1 time. And then we distribute. 1 times x is x. 1 times -1 is -1, and we're going to change the signs, and we have no remainder, so that's our answer, x squared plus x plus 1. Okay, now then, that's all there is to long division when it comes out even. Every now and then you'll have one that doesn't come out even, and that's what we're about to do right now, okay? We're going to divide 2x to the 4th plus 4x cubed minus 5x squared plus 3x minus 2. By x squared plus 2x minus 3. Now this one's going to have a remainder, and I'm going to show you what to do with it. I want you to go ahead and try to write that down within your division bar, and I'm going to go to the next slide and do that for you, and then you can check and see how you did. Okay, so there's your dividend, and then on the outside we've got the x squared plus 2x and minus 3. Okay, so that's how it should look. All right, now you're ready to divide. This time you're taking the x squared into everything, and you're forgetting about the 2x and the -3 until you get to the very end of the distribution, and then you distribute. So how many times does 1x squared go into 2x to the 4th? Well, 1 goes into 2 times. X squared goes into x to the 4th, x squared times. And then we distribute. Notice we didn't have to put any placeholders in this one because it descended 4, 3, 2, 1, and then a constant, so you didn't have placeholders this time. Always check that first. 2x squared times x squared is 2x to the 4th. And then 2x squared times 2x is 4x cubed. Okay, and then 2x squared times -3 is -6x squared. Draw your line. Change your signs on everything on the bottom row. Okay, the 2x to the 4th drop out. That looks like a negative on that top. It's not, it's just I kind of made a mess on that. So the 4x cubes cancel out, and I get 1x squared. Put the 1 if you want to. You don't have to. Plus 3x minus 2. And then you continue. How many times does 1x squared go into x squared? Well, it's going to go 1 time. and then you multiply. 1 times x squared is x squared. 1 times 2x is 2x. And 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Okay, now you're going to change your signs. Draw that line. Change your signs on everything on the bottom row. It's just like subtracting. If you don't want to change your signs, you can just subtract. I just think it's a little bit easier to do it this way. The x squareds cancel out. 3x minus 2x is x. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Now that x plus 1 is your remainder, and you're going to write it just like you would any other remainder. You're going to put what's left over, which is x plus 1, over the divisor, which is x squared plus 2x minus 3. And that's your answer. That's long division. That's an example of each type. Now we're going to do what we call synthetic division. Most people like this a little bit better. Okay? It's always good to be able to do it. It's just that it's synthetic, so you can't always do it. Okay? The only time you can do it, use the synthetic division, is when you just have a linear divisor, then you can use it. If it's nonlinear, then you can't use it. So we're going to take this equation, x to the 4th minus 10x squared minus 2x plus 4. And we're going to divide that by x plus 3. Okay, so that's the problem. Now, when you do synthetic division, you're going to do an upside down division bar like that. And what you do is you go in and you just put the coefficients of all of the terms in your dividend. So x to the 4th has a 1, so we put a 1. There is no x cubed, so we put a 0 for the filler. Then negative 10, and then negative 2, and then 4. Be sure that you put your filler in there. If you don't, it'll be a problem. Now take your divisor, x plus 3. You always divide by the 0. So if x plus 3 equals 0 was an equation, the 0 would be negative 3. So that's what we divide by. Now the way you do this is you take your 1, your first term, and you just drop it down. And then you multiply. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Then you combine your terms. 0 and negative 3 is negative 3. And then you multiply again. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Combine your terms and you get negative 1. Then you multiply again. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Combine the terms and you get 1. And again, you multiply. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. You combine your terms and you get 1. And then you're ready to write your final answer. You take the coefficients that you reduced all this to. The 1, negative 3, negative 1, 1, 1. You take these. And you start with 1 power lower than your dividend. That x to the 4th, 1 power lower would be x to the 3rd. So we've got 1x cubed. And then just descend. Minus 3x squared. Descend again would be minus x. Descend again would be plus 1. And then that last number over there is your remainder. So you're going to put plus 1 over the divisor, which was x plus 3. And that's your answer. And you could get exactly the same thing if you were to do long division on this, but this is just a little easier. Okay, this is part 1 of this lesson. I'm going to stop the recording and label this as part 1, and then I'll start over with part 2, which is not that much longer, but it's easier for me to upload the video. So I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'll do part 2 coming up next that you'll need to do with this same section of notes.